Welcome to Change for Good. It's Thursday, July 14th. It's 11 o'clock here in Toronto. And I'm saying to Patch a few minutes ago that I've been looking forward to this all week, to have the great pleasure of speaking with a good friend of mine, Patch Patchell-Evans, many of you know as Patch, who is the founder and CEO of GoodLife Fitness, which is like Canada's largest fitness chain, and also the founder and president of CanFit Pro, which is Canada's leading fitness education and certification organization and body. So welcome, Patch. It's just a pleasure to be speaking with you.
I'm looking forward to it, Paul. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, you know, and for everyone joining today, and we've got people literally from all over the world. We've got people from, I know some of your folks from GoodLife are on board here, and really over the last, this is the 15th Change for Good conversation in a row, 15 weeks in a row. And during that time—
That makes you a long series.
Oh, what did I say, what?
That makes you a long running series.
Yeah, I know. So, but it's so exciting because it's so great because we started this at the beginning of the pandemic. No one knew what was going on. All we wanted to do was to create an opportunity for people who were working in the social change world, whether they're in a corporation, nonprofit, or government, to have an opportunity to listen to people like you, Patch, and to understand how you're looking at the world and thinking differently. And so that was 15 weeks ago. No one knew what was going on. We still don't know a lot of what's going on, but we're a little closer. And so it's just a great pleasure to be speaking with you and getting your point of view. The thing I also wanted to mention for anyone who's new to Change for Good is, of course, Patch and I will be talking about business and social change and what GoodLife is doing. But also we encourage everybody to write in their questions. It's not just our conversation. Really look forward to hearing from you. And so if anyone thinks of any questions you'd like to ask Patch during our conversation, don't hold back. Please just send them in. So let's get into it. Patch, it's a pleasure to speak with you. As I said, you must have been through a lot over the last 15 weeks with GoodLife. If you could just give us a little bit of a glimpse into your own life there. I know you're based in Victoria. What's changed for you, and what are you seeing and thinking about today?
Well, in the background, you're hearing my new puppy. So
nice.
one of the big things that's changed is we had a wonderful dog that was 5 years old, and it died suddenly of big tumor. And then, you know, in the middle of all the sadness of COVID and all of the complications, you lose your best friend, right? And then we were lucky enough to have a connect. My wife Silken had a connection with this lady who had a new litter, and we got a new puppy. So my legs and hands have little teeth marks on them. But,
that's a good problem.
Yeah, it's a good problem. But you know, it kind of is representative of COVID has shaken everything up, right? And it's changed the whole social order of how people work, how people play, how people connect, or lack of all those things, right? And it's forced us to go inside, literally. You know, we're inside our physical space and we're inside our mental space. And it's made exercising really restrictive because you just got that small space that you live in to exercise in, and you get the limitations of what you have in that space to exercise with, right? So it's had a very detrimental effect on a lot of people's fitness. As a company, we went digital very quickly to provide group fitness online, to provide independent training programs online. We even now have personal training online. But it's still not the same as people being able to go in a physical space, see other people, and exercise, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a big change for people, and you know, people are worried about their health, and the most important thing about your health is to stay in shape. So, you know,
and how are you personally staying in shape? What are you doing? And how, you know, given that it's different than what you probably would have done, what are you doing?
You know, I focused on cardiovascular fitness because it's easier. So whether you go rollerblading, depending on what the weather was at the time, whether you go for a run, for lots of walks, you can socially isolate when you do all those things, right? I have a home exercise bike for when I can't get into my own club, so that made a difference. I found because of all the complications with COVID, I was working 18 hours a day. So, I'd sit on that bike and be on my phone calls. And that's probably, but sitting on a bike in a house isn't the same thing as going into a club and having that social experience or going outside. And you got to get some outside time. And if you're in a condo or an apartment, you got to get some sunlight on your face, even through the clouds, right? So it's important psychologically just to get yourself outside,
Right.
and we're social human beings, right? So I can be on Zoom calls for 18 hours a day, but it doesn't make up for just being close to someone. Luckily the kids were all quarantined at home with us. Our kids are between 20 and 24, but they were all at home, so we're lucky as a couple that way.
Nice.
But they all had to come back from school.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I always say, with the Zoom, it's good, but it's not good enough. It's a big difference.
It's not good enough. It doesn't replace, a handshake or a hug.
Yeah, totally. So beyond the personal, you've got this massive operation. You've got clubs all across Canada, all churning along, thousands and millions of Canadians going to these clubs all the time.
Yeah, a million and a half people.
1.5 million people every day going into those clubs, and then not. And tell us, what was that? What possibly could have gone through your head? I mean, what was your initial reaction to this?
Well, our initial reaction was you could see the pandemic spreading across the world. And my initial reaction is the safety of my members and the safety of my staff. Right. So if you just think yourself, well, this threatens my business, it threatens my livelihood and all that kind of stuff. And you have to kind of put that aside and say, I really don't want anyone to get sick and lose their life, because we didn't know what to do. And at the start of COVID, no one knew what to do. So we were the first fitness clubs in the country to close, right. And then we also just stopped taking money from everybody. And, so all your money stops, all the workouts stop, everyone's employment stops. Well, we paid our people for 2 weeks anyways, but it's kind of like, okay, now what do we do? How long does this go on, right? And then we had to ride the roller coaster with everybody else. And at the same time, everyone's looking forward to providing leadership. Like, how do I stay in shape? You just can't not open. Like, give me an alternative. And so we had to work as quickly as we could from our homes to create that digital opportunity for people to exercise at home.
And were you able to, during the course of this, I mean, even the most basic things, as you're talking about Zoom and you've got all these staff and so on, like how as a leader, how did that change, how you were working with your own people? What did you have to do differently?
Well, as a leader, what you have to provide is hope. So it doesn't matter how many times people come to you and they're beat up, you have to be the resilient one. Right? And so I tried to think, how do I fill my own cup here? So I was lucky enough to, I had a bunch of injuries. I'd broken a bunch of ribs, my clavicle skiing. And I couldn't sleep very well, so it forced me to get up. And a couple of books fell in my lap, in our home library. One was Robin Sharma's book, The 5 a.m. Club. The other one was Ruiz, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, The 4 Agreements. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to read these books, God. I can't, the pains keep me awake at night. So long story short, I took from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning to focus on myself, my own journey. And that made the next 15 hours doable because I'd looked after my own self. I filled my own cup up.
Mm-hmm.
right? And so in the middle of the day, I'd figure out some exercise. So I had the emotional, psychological fill up in the morning, and I had the physical fill up, mental fill up. The benefits of physical fitness are hugely psychologically beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that in the afternoon. So I broke my day up that way. And that's how I kept myself together. As a result of it, I created this thing called the Leader's 21-Day Guide to Resilience, which you were the guy who got the first copy, right? And so on the front of this, it shows, a cup getting filled up, right? And so the idea is, as leaders, we're going to get drained by giving our energy out, giving our vitality out, giving our souls out. So the idea behind this is to fill your own cup up. So that's available to anybody. Today's the release. It's getting released with your program, and anybody can have it for free. Share it with anybody you want to.
And we will share it with everyone here. And in fact, the whole Change for Good community will get a link to it. I think my colleague Elizabeth will put it in the Q&A in the chat area here of the Zoom. So you can click on it, and everyone here are the first people to get this, except for me, which I did have, as I said, in full disclosure, Patch and I had spoken a number of weeks ago. You told me about this, and I said, well, I'll try it. And I did it. I did it this morning, actually. I do it every morning. And I have to say, it has been, I've really, really benefited from this. I'm doing all kinds of things differently than I would have. It's made me feel better in all kinds of ways. So I encourage everybody.
21 days, 21 minutes for 21 days.
21 minutes, 21 days. And you've got stretching, which I never do. I don't drink enough water. Now I do. You've got kind of creative writing and journaling. I never did that. Now I'm doing that. And it's, again, I won't belabor it, but I just encourage I appreciate you coming up with that so fast, and encourage everyone to check it out. Patch, the other thing I was thinking when you were talking.
Very active doing that, Paul. Very active doing that fills up my cup.
It's great.
So when you talk about change for good, is the person you have to start with is yourself.
Mm.
And so if you work on yourself, that enables you to help other people, right?
Totally.
It's that old quote, be the change you want to see. And so that's what we try to do in our company, and I have to do that as an individual too.
So here's a kind of a more personal question. I was just thinking about my own situation here, and during the course of these many weeks, I feel like and I'm sure everyone, you've got a kind of roller coaster going on, where people are, you feel sometimes it's, if you're fortunate, it's been actually some very, very positive things. You mentioned having your family around, feel the same way. And there's also sometimes very difficult and psychologically. So maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing, like during the course of all this, you're a super positive guy. I know that, and I so appreciate that about you. But what was a time that you felt like kind of at the bottom, and then another time, and how did you get out of that?
It's interesting. You feel at the bottom when you don't see the way out, right? And then, so my technique is to say, well, okay, maybe there isn't a way out. Maybe this is the new reality. So how do I make it the best of this, right? And so if you take the worst that can happen, everything from that point on is better. So what's the worst that can happen, and how do I build from it, right? So that's one premise. And then the other premise is, that's the worst thing that happened, how do I run my best race? How do I make it do well, right? Mm-hmm. So as I was working on this stuff at the same time, my wife's name is Silken Lauman, and she's a 4-time Olympian, and she's also an incredibly positive person, right? Mm. But in her own life, she's dealt with different issues of depression and, that kind of stuff. And so she's written a book called Unsinkable. And then she created a podcast, and then she's created this whole website that helps affect social change and helps people deal with mental challenges, right? Psychological challenges. It's a site that shares stories. So Silken every day is talking to people who are sharing their stories with her. So of course, Silke and I are talking about the stories, right? So I'm telling her my stories about GoodLife. She's telling me stories about people from all walks of life dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
So between us, we hear the hard stuff, but then we hear the inspirational, aspirational stuff that goes on in the world, and we fill each other's cup that way, right? And so, and the neat thing about COVID, if you know, the neatest thing about it all is her and I have been together every day, right? So because she's a motivational speaker and she travels all over across the country, and I travel all across the country with clubs in all the provinces, you know, we never have got to spend as much time together.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the huge benefits for COVID for me is more time with my kids and a lot more time with my wife. And then we collaborate on how to make things better all around. Right. And it's exciting that way.
I love that. I feel exactly the same way. I feel like so many things have happened that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And it starts at home. I feel the same way for me with, you know, my wife, Joanne, our kids, Sophie and Joshua. Like, you know, we've all spent time together in a way we never would have, which is the most important thing. So the other question, on the other side of that question, you're a super creative, super innovative entrepreneur. This, I think, has created a time when people are, you know, coming up with some incredible new things, new ideas. In our case, we created Change for Good. In your case, you think back about the last 15 weeks, what is that thing that you're most excited about that you maybe thought of that you wouldn't have thought of if it hadn't been for this?
Two sides of a coin, but the exact opposite. So one side is our focus in the company has been taking our digital transformation, accelerating it way faster than we would have otherwise. Because all your digital team wasn't focused on how you keep the lights on and running the company, because the lights were off, right? Because everything was in hibernation.
Sure.
So those people could focus on our digital transformation, providing home exercise for people. So when you can't get to the club, you can do it. But right now, this is what they could do. So that was one side. On the other side, it allowed me to read the books and have the time, because I wasn't traveling, to focus on creating, like the 21-Day Guide of Resilience, created two other programs. One's called the 6 E's, which will come out later. And another one is a whole addition to our memberships, which help people on their personal transformation journey, right? So if you link the physical changes that you want to experience, and it's well known, but not everyone that doesn't do exercise knows the psychological and mental benefits of exercise. You know, from 20-25% increase in productivity to the same increase in happiness. The same, you know, the best antidote to help depression issues is exercise, right? Of course, you take the medication your doctor tells you, but exercise is key. Your body needs it, right? And so tied into all that stuff is writing ways to help people go along their personal journey. And then we'll tie that eventually into memberships. So that people, they can look after their physical, mental, social, and self-actualization journey. And so we can help people in the whole process. And so that's part of the Change for Good, right? It's like, if you look after people's all sides of every dimension of them, you know, because what COVID has pointed out to people is you're in charge of your own health.
Right.
And you talked about how you think positively and how I think positively. Well, people think positively when they're goal-oriented, when they have goals that are personal, business, social, emotional, psychological, how you tie it all in together, right? And so this is given time to think about those things.
Thank you. We've got a whole bunch of questions here. I've got loads of questions. I think we could be talking all day here, but I want to get to some of these. We have a question from Drew. I'll just read this. It says, having done things during COVID-19 that you normally don't have the time to do, do you think you will make changes and time for the things in your day once things get back to normal? These things, after things get back to normal, you're going to do those things?
The answer is I'll probably be able to do it 5 out of 7 days a week. Right? So I was doing it 7 days a week, but you know, the reality is there's going to be a plane to catch at 4:30 in the morning, you know, but that's probably not going to happen for a while, you know. So more than anything, my schedule's been disrupted by getting that little puppy up at 5:30 in the morning and outside, right? But that's okay. That's a great disruption. So it just means instead of doing something at 5, I do it at 7. But I think 5 out of 7 days, I'll still be doing the same thing. I mean, the thing I made sure that I did every day was exercise. You know,
Right on.
You know, and it doesn't have to be like extreme exercise. It's just like get enough exercise every day. You know, our bodies were designed for it, and I just don't function properly without it. Because I know what it is not to be able to exercise because of injuries. You know, and so it's such a treasure and a pleasure to do it. So that will not go away, to answer your question. And a different form of exercise is taking the time to think of things. So, you know, I didn't meditate much before. I meditated, but not that much. I had a 2-week period where I meditated a lot. With the puppy, I've lost that a bit. I will definitely put that back into there, right? In the 21-day guide to resilience, there's a 1 minute of meditation, right? You know, so I definitely want to make that 20 minutes a day.
Great. And today's one, by the way, for me was I am resilient, actually. That was the meditation mantra.
Exactly.
Now, there's a question here. You started something called the GoodLife Foundation. I think a number of years ago. And first of all, for those people who don't know about the GoodLife Foundation, I think it would be great to share what that organization is and what it does, and also answer the question that we have here, which is how has the situation we're in today affected the work of the GoodLife Foundation?
So it was 26 years ago now, we started the GoodLife Kids Foundation. And the thing I noticed back then was that we were getting the adults in shape, but the kids weren't getting a shot. And kids fitness wasn't well thought about. No one was focused on it. And so I wanted to highlight it, and I wanted to support organizations that would focus on kids fitness. So at the clubs, we did major fundraising events where we would raise money, and then we would give that money to all these different charities across Canada that help children. And we did that for 24 years, and then made a big difference in helping the kids. And then I have a special needs daughter who has quite severe autism, and my Silken pointed out to me that, you know, we spend a lot of time and energy on autism, and we run a foundation on autism and stuff like that. You know, who's looking after those kids? And we really thought about it. And now the average kids have much more opportunities than 25 years ago. But people with autism or different special needs have almost hardly any opportunities for fitness, and they need it just like anybody else.
Sure.
So we've switched to the Kids Foundation to focusing on children with special needs. And the parents of children with special needs are at the end of the rope financially, emotionally, and so that way we can help these. So it was to be launched in September, which was group fitness activities in all our clubs and other charities that we could work with. So that's been delayed because no one's been able to work, but we hope to have it up and running again very quickly. And at the same time, every summer for, I can't remember how many years, let's say 15 years, we've had a teenagers free fitness program. So teenagers between 14 and 17 could work out for free in the clubs in the daytime in the summer. And it was the same logic really, is let's give everybody a shot. So their parents might not have thought it was worth spending the money on. They might not have had an opportunity for it. But that way this teenagers could come in the club, work it for free, and find out what fitness was about. And so they might choose to do it anywhere that they wanted to, but it'll make a difference. I mean, it's really falls in line with, for 40, not 40 years, but almost 40 years, been giving away a book called Living the Good Life that I wrote a long time ago. And the idea is we give the book to anybody who walks in the door. And the book's goal is to motivate you to look out for yourself and exercise. How simple it really is. And the reason we give it for free is even if you don't join our club, we want you to exercise somewhere and do something. You know, so when you think about Change for Good, our mission as a company is to improve the fitness of our society.
I love that. I think this is, you're getting into an area that I'm super interested in exploring, which is something that probably not a lot of people think about, which is that it's more than fitness. I mean, it's more than the working out. It's more than going to the clubs. And this is an organization you've created with GoodLife Kids Foundation, which is actually a kind of national social change machine, I would call it, you know. And you talked a little bit about mindfulness and the impact of mental health. You've got a community of, I don't know how many thousands of employees and millions of people coming to GoodLife every single day. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you see the connection between fitness and social change within the kind of ecosystem that you've built there across Canada?
Well, fitness is actually probably one of the key components of social change, because when you take the time to look out for yourself, then you're sending a message to yourself, to your family, to everyone you're involved with, is I'm important, right? You know, just think of a mother who's just had a child who doesn't take time for herself, like half an hour. Yeah. You know, the child's very important, but the mom's important too. The mom has to be looked after, right? So the mom needs her half hour of fitness, right? Then the mom needs her half hour of, you know, her time.
Yes.
Right. And so if you take that 20 to 30 minutes a day of exercise and realize that you're looking after your longevity, you're looking after your vitality, you're looking after your energy. If you do that, every other aspect of your life is higher. And you're calmer, and you're sweeter to yourself, and you're sweeter to society. Right? And you will make more money, you'll be happier. Like, there's all these benefits, right? But you have to take the time. You have to carve the time out. You have to put in your schedule when you're exercising. Not I'll fit it in. It has to be priority number one. Whenever I go to bed at night, I know when I'm exercising the next day. Right? Because you know when you're eating, right? You got a rough idea when you're going to eat tomorrow.
Sure.
And you got a pretty good idea that you're going to get to sleep tomorrow night. Right? So you should be thinking about, when do I make sure that I feed my machine, which is exercise?
I love it. Well,
So if you look after yourself, you are then in position to look after other people. And then you're in position to be a highly more functional part of society, making a difference in total, right? So by looking after yourself, you're looking after everybody. You know,
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's, again, there's so much more to that, to what you just said. I think it's, you know, I think that people are starting to think differently about what exercise means and why it's important, and of course what organizations like you are doing. But I want to here's another bunch of questions here. Mary asks, now that we know the impact of doing meditation during this hard time, would GoodLife offer this in their clubs when reopening and coming back?
We actually already do.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we created it in our clubs, and I think it's about 30 clubs right now, a thing called Mind Den.
Mind Den, okay.
Yeah, so we have small rooms where our individual Mind Dens, and we have larger rooms where 4 or 5 people can go in and meditate together. And you put on a headset, and we have meditation for you to listen to.
Oh,
and then we also have some meditation classes, and we're planning on growing that as well. And so it's easier to do with others. It's like almost every other activity, right? But we're providing an individual space over time. It'll come into all the clubs where you can go do it by yourself. And where we're building new clubs, we're building mind dens where people can do it together.
I love it. And so if we've got information about, where people could find out about that, let's share that. A number of other questions here. Lisa says, as an employee who loves the culture of GoodLife and where it stands in its priority to health for its associates, I would like to know if you could please address how the company culture may ease restrictions and make accommodations for those who have medical restrictions wearing masks. Is that something that you all have thought about?
Yeah, we've worked with ministers of health in most of the provinces on different stuff. And different provinces have different rules whether you can wear the masks or not wear them when you're exercising. Right now, I think most places are allowing you to exercise without the masks.
Okay.
But the thing that happens is the rules change almost daily.
Right. So I think we have to stay tuned on how that's all going to happen. And do the right thing, wear the mask as much as possible. And again, I think that there's been some things where people who have various disabilities and other restrictions don't have to wear masks. So I think that changes I think it's a bit different in every province as well. So
yeah, when I talk to my friends that run clubs in Taiwan, Hong Kong, stuff like that, people are so much more culturally sensitive to wearing a mask. And it's just like, well, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And when we had SARS, everyone learned to cough into their elbow and in order to carry a handkerchief around. And it wasn't that long that everyone always had a handkerchief, like 40, 50 years ago. We have to adapt to changing times.
For sure. Here's another question from Sam, who has written, as the pandemic continues, I felt feelings of being overwhelmed and anxiety upon returning to work due to sudden change in the environment. If you also feel like this, what steps do you put in place to offset anxiety and overwhelming feelings?
I think you can have external things to offset anxiety, but I think what you really have to do is look at why do I have anxiety? Right? Is it a sense of all of a sudden going from no people around me to people around me? Is it a sense of I could catch the virus and be sick? What's creating the anxiety? One of the things I tell people all the time is stop watching television. Or give yourself 15 minutes, of COVID updates, and that's it. My mother is 100, and she's at home watching the television all the time. It's like hours and hours of COVID updates, right? And all you get from the television is the worst news.
Yeah, exactly. They don't put good stuff.
Good stuff doesn't sell, right?
Yeah.
So it really has to be fill your cup with good stuff. So go to the root of your anxiety. Keep asking yourself questions. Why do you feel that way? And and once again, what's the worst case that could happen, and how do I make it better?
Thank you. So here's another question, not from an anonymous person, but people may not know that GoodLife is actually sponsored, I think, one of the largest, I'm not sure, cardiac centers in Canada, I think. The question is, has GoodLife Fitness cardiac rehab seen any COVID patients come through? You may not know that, but have you had any connection with the folks at Toronto General?
Yeah, the University Hospital Network in Toronto we gave $5 million to women's cardiac care, and because we thought it was the most Well, it's in our area of expertise. They hired a brilliant man, Dr. O, who drives that whole thing. And we helped build 2 centers for physical cardiac rehabilitation in the hospitals, 2 different locations. He's got all kinds of programming. He helps so many people. And it's not just women, but there was a focus on the research had all been about men and not about women, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we really help fund that research. It's actually in the Peter Monk Cardiac Care Center in the University Hospital Network. And so they're doing a lot of very positive things. I don't know if some of those people had COVID or not. It's hard to know.
Yeah.
And I don't know if would be even allowed to tell me that.
Well, I think that, again, I think we could share information about that center, which is an incredibly important program. Sadly, we're running out of time, but there's so many more questions here. But I have a couple of my own questions, which I haven't gotten a chance to ask all of them. So really, one of the things that I think is people like all of us are so interested in listening to people like you is, what are the things that you could think of in terms of advice of, being a leader? People on this call are leading nonprofit organizations, corporations, others, and so on. Do you have your own kind of checklist of things that you could share with people? Like, what goes through your mind as a leader that you could provide advice to everybody else? What can help us?
Take what you're doing seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. You're not the end. You're not the end. You're not going to have all the answers. You're not going to have all the answers. You're not even going to know all the questions. So take the people you're dealing with as seriously, the issues they have seriously, but focus on those and don't think that you have to be everything, because you can't be. Right? I think one of the most important things to do is listen. So I try to spend more time listening than I spend talking.
I love it. Thank you. And finally, how do you have a sense now of, if you had to kind of cast your mind forward, everyone's talking about building back better. You've already built an incredibly successful business organization with GoodLife Fitness and so on, but what does the future look like? How does that become even better than it is?
Well, I think what the pandemic has done is it's really pointed out to people that they are in charge of their own health. Because the hospitals are overwhelmed just dealing with crises. And when they call it a health care system, that's not really correct. It's to help you get back to health system. But your job is to look after your own health. Your job is not to get to the hospital in the first place. So the better shape you're in, the less risk you have of every disease. Right? And it's not just physical shape, it's psychological shape. So what COVID has highlighted to people is I really need to look after myself. So what we've found is when the clubs have been reopening, there are more people that are coming back in with, I want to get healthy. It's not, often when people first start exercising, it's, I want to lose weight. And that would be like 80%, the first timers coming to the club, 80% of them would say, I want to lose weight. But now 80% of people are coming to say, I want to get healthy. You will lose weight as you get healthy anyways.
Yeah. But
the parameter has changed from a superficial condition to a holistic condition. Right? And, we say that we're health obsessed and fitness focused. So fitness is a driver of health.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty impossible to be healthy without being fit. You have no depth, you have no resilience, right? You know, if you exercise, you boost your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
All these, you know, from keeping your arteries clean to keeping your limbs flexible, all these things happen. And all these things happen in your head as well as in your heart, as well as in your tissues and tendons and ligaments. So people are more aware now than ever. And even though some people are thinking, well, I don't want to go in an environment where people might have COVID, there's been studies that show that that's actually the safest environment to be in. And we created a 44-page protocol list of making people safe when they come into a club. Because people are going, I need this, but now people are going, I want this, and I deserve it.
That's great. So I have one question for you, one other final question for you. Actually, I have a lot of more questions, but in the time that we have, I have one more question, which is, and thinking back to the 21-day Leader's Guide to Resilience, for everyone, check it out. But one of the things that I think is particularly great about it is every day starts with a quotation, every single day, right? So when you think about it, because we've been through this change for good, 15 change for good conversations, people talking about change for good. So if we had to include a change for good quote from you, what would that be? What's change for good? What's your quote that would be in the book about change for good?
Don't let the things you can't do stop you from doing the things you can.
Love it.
Don't let the things you can't do stop you from doing the things you can.
We got to share that with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Patch, and thanks to your whole team and Susie and everyone. It's so great. We've just had such a pleasure as always speaking with you, and it's been such a treat being able to share this with everybody. It's such a great way to end this first 15 episodes of Change for Good. I can't think of anything better than that. Also want to thank our great team at Impact, in particular Elizabeth, who's orchestrated the whole thing, which has been absolutely amazing. Wanted to mention that everyone who's watching today, in fact, everyone on the whole list of Change for Good participants will receive a link to the recording of our conversation with my conversation with Patch today. And also, I think we're going to send everyone a link to the 21-day Leader's Guide to Resilience. So you'll be among the first people anywhere to be able to do that. I encourage you to do it. Also, as I mentioned before, I can't remember, we're going to take a break for the summer for August from our Change for Good episodes, but we're going to be back with a new energy and a whole bunch of great Change for Good programs and episodes in September. So we really encourage everyone to stay tuned. And thank you again, Patch. And
thank you very much. You're great.
Such a pleasure, and congratulations. I think that as of tomorrow or the next couple of weeks, almost all the GoodLifes will be open again. So,
well, that depends on the government.
Go ahead and get it.
We've got a few people in Toronto we got to get okay. Yeah.
We'll make that happen soon. Thanks again, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.